23 years ago, I lost my right forearm in an industrial accident. All I had to do was just clean a 15-foot section and I was done. Next thing I know, I heard the motor start. My notes fell out of my pocket, right on the edge there. I figured I had enough time to grab them. A mistake that I'll regret for the rest of my life. I don't know what made me just try and reach for those. They were just sitting up far enough. Next thing I know, I feel my arms start turning. I went into instant shock at that point and I just pulled it out. I just yanked. But I could see my hand, all the bones. My lifestyle that I was used to came to a halt. That's one thing you shouldn't push aside is safety first. If I would have followed the safety rules 23 years ago, I would still have my right hand.
A sobering story, isn't it? The moral of the story is that workplace safety could have big consequences. The difference between being able to work and not work, as in this story. Even the difference between life and death. If we don't get safety right, if you don't get safety right, nothing else we do matters. So let's start inside the branch. It's the start of a new day, and workers like you are waiting to be sent out to jobs. But before we send you out to a job, we will give you safety training. And this training occurs between you and the labor-ready customer service representative, or CSR, as he or she is sending you out to a job.
This customer is pretty picky about the type of worker we send them, and that's why we thought you'd be a good fit, based on your background and how well you've performed on other assignments we sent you to.
Excuse me, but I thought that what is going on here is so important that I had to explain a few things. Labor Ready practices what is known as right match dispatch. That is, we try to send only those workers to specific customers who are a good match for the customer and the job the customer wants done. This ensures the customer is getting a quality worker, and it also ensures the customer is getting a safe worker. Unless you're a certified forklift driver, we'll never send you to a forklift driving job. Okay, now let's get back to that in-branch safety training.
Now, in I1, in a construction setting, there are some particular safety issues that you must be made aware of and prepare for. For example, you'll probably be doing a lot of lifting.
Sorry to butt in again, but this is another important point. When you work for Labor Ready, you may be sent out to a variety of different work situations. And we wanted to give you an idea of the four most common safety concerns that you'll face. A construction site is a busy place with many hazards. Injuries can happen when you, the worker, have an unwanted encounter with one of these hazards. For example, to prevent these hazards, do not leave tools or other items on window ledges, shelves, cranes, or working platforms. You got lucky this time. But the key to workplace safety is not leaving anything to luck. Be prepared. Here are some simple rules to keep in mind. First of all, be attentive. Watch where you're going. When it comes to doors, never stand in front of a windowless swinging door. And never position yourself between a moving and a fixed object, such as a vehicle and a wall. So follow these rules and you'll go a long way toward protecting your health and staying safe. Let's pick this up before someone trips on it. And now, let's go to our next safety concern. There is such a thing as working too hard. The term is overexertion. Overexertion occurs more easily if you're older, in poor shape, or overweight. Overexertion can happen in a hot environment or anywhere where you're lifting, bending, twisting, pulling, or pushing. To avoid overexertion, always drink plenty of water. Now let's go on to our third major safety concern. In this case, the worker's mistake was overreaching. When you're using a stepladder, you should always face the stepladder's treads because falls from stepladders can kill. So make sure you fully open the stepladder and you lock its locking device. Oh, another thing, never use a stepladder folded up and leaning against a surface, such as a wall. And when you're on the ladder, make sure you always have 2 feet and 1 hand on the ladder at all times. That's called 3-point contact. And finally, never carry heavy or bulky objects up or down a stepladder. Now, let's go on to our last major safety concern. Serious injuries can occur when your feet are on the ground, what we call slips, trips, and falls. Often these accidents occur because of poor housekeeping. A rug is out of place, a hole is unmarked, or in this case, poor housekeeping has left debris on the ground. Construction sites, they're always in constant flux. 5 minutes ago, this board wasn't even here. And look at this. So it's important that you stay aware of your surroundings when you're walking on any work site. Oh, and a few more words about slips, trips, and falls. When working in building construction areas, be alert for wall and floor openings such as window frames and skylights. And do not remove plywood used to cover a floor opening. One more thing, make sure to stay away from roof and platform edges. Let's get back to our CSR and our worker having their safety talk prior to dispatch.
Now in R1, whenever we send a worker to any job, we make sure to outfit them with their personal protective equipment, or PPE for short.
Okay, here I am again. Sorry to keep breaking in, but this is so crucial. PPE, it can save your life. As she said, depending on the type of job you're sent to, you'll receive a specific set of PPE. In fact, I have to point this out. This shows how seriously Labor Ready takes safety, that it provides standard PPE. We don't depend on the customer for that, as some other temporary staffing agencies do. Now, depending on the job you're sent to, you might receive a hard hat. These are standard issue at construction sites. This will protect you from falling objects. Next, steel-toed boots. Remember, falling objects can miss your head and hit your feet. Another example of a common PPE, protective gloves. Different jobs require different hand protection. So let's move on. Our eyes. When the CSR hands you a pair of safety glasses, it's not a suggestion. You may think they don't look so flattering, but that's not the point.
Hi, my name is Joe McGarrah, and 20 years ago on the job, if I would have been wearing these, I wouldn't have to wear this. I was kind of in a hurry, trying to keep ahead of the gang there, and was scraping the head of the screws, and in one motion, the flathead screwdriver came down from the screw and went right through went down the fulcrum of my arm, dead center through my eye, destroying the cornea, destroying the lens, and severing my retina. There was close to 18 months completely out of work for surgeries and recovery and surgery and recovery. Well, I'd like to say I was unaware of the safety glasses. Life would be a lot different today if I had worn them. All you do is see yourself in the mirror and you have permanent dismemberment. It's pretty hard to not think about. Matter of fact, my brother's a project manager and general foreman, and he starts all his new hire safety talks with my story. So that's the first thing that's issued is safety glasses and the vests and gloves and so on and so forth. So I feel quite different now.
Joe here is convinced of the importance of safety glasses. As a matter of fact, he's convinced of the importance of all PPE. So, what's that? Head, toes, eyes, hands? What's left? Ah, your ears, of course. Some work sites that we send you to can be very loud places. and that excessive noise and vibration can harm your hearing. So, that's why we issue these earplugs. For now, let's get back to our frozen friends.
Here's all of your PPE for your job today. But before I send you out, one last word of caution. If you're asked to do anything on the job site that is something different from what we've talked about here, don't do it. Instead, stop what you're doing and immediately call us here at the branch. I'm not kidding.
I can't overemphasize the importance of the safety training you'll receive at the branch before you head out to your job. Pay attention. As I said, all we can do is tell you how to be safe. When you walk out that door, it's up to you whether you put what you've learned into practice and stay safe, or just blow it off and think you know better. Now, I need to take a few seconds and talk to you about what to do if you ever face a problem such as discrimination, retaliation, or harassment on the job. That's why Labor Ready uses the Silent Whistle program. Temporary workers can submit concerns directly to Silent Whistle. Phone calls are answered live by an independent call center, and callers will be given clear instructions on how to proceed. The Silent Whistle program operates in multiple languages, and you can use the program anonymously. So we've talked to the worker about the tasks and safety hazards of this specific work setting, and he's been issued his all-important PPE. So let's follow him to the job and discuss some of the safety elements of construction work. Whether you're on a construction site, at a warehouse, or at the manufacturing facility, you may receive on-site training from the customer on matters that weren't addressed in the branch. Pay attention to these. For example, our worker is getting instruction on how to use a circular saw. Take a moment also to note that he's wearing his proper PPE for a construction site. He has his hard hat, his safety glasses, his gloves, and his work boots. Fantastic. Looks like you're ready to go.
Thank you.
In a construction setting, the safety concerns include fall protection, working in trenches, and electrical concerns. Let's start by looking up. The scaffolding, ladders, rooftop work. The higher you are, the harder you can fall, and that means injuries. One of the ways you may be working off the ground is on scaffolding. Do not go on a scaffold unless branch staff dispatches you to do so. Now let's go up and see how our worker is doing. Never go up scaffolding unless it's been checked by a competent person. When you're working on a scaffold, make sure it's steady and that the top rails, mid rails, and toe boards are all in place. Also, the scaffold must be fully planked, and keep the walking surface free of debris, tools, and other items that you could trip over. Also, make sure that no one is working under you, and make sure the scaffolding is at least 10 feet away from all power lines. Now let's talk about rooftop work. Do not go on any roof unless branch staff dispatches you to do so. Let's take a look up. On a construction site, rooftop work also requires site-specific training and fall protection. In some cases, that means workers will be wearing harnesses and lifelines. Check with your site supervisor if you're unsure about the conditions. Now, when you're working up that high, you've got to be careful when transporting materials. When you're working on a flat roof, it should have a 42-inch parapet wall. And if it doesn't, you must be using a harness or lifeline, or you must have a perimeter line running around all exposed areas. With all that said, let's go back to the ground level so we can talk about ladders. There's more to safe ladder use than you might think. Earlier, we looked at the unsafe use of a step ladder. Now let's look at a straight ladder, which is a common feature at just about every construction site. First off, when you get ready to climb a ladder, the first thing you want to do is check for any potential safety hazards. Now, if this were a wooden ladder, you would be looking for cracks or any other kind of wood damage. You also want to take a look at the rungs and make sure that they're not coated with any kind of oil or grease that could cause you to slip. Make sure the ladder has the proper safety feet, spikes for soil, and rubber pads for concrete floors. Now, when setting up your ladder, it's very important to keep clear of any doorways or heavy traffic. Someone could come out and tip over your ladder, sending you painfully to the ground. Also, regarding ladder setup, remember 4-to-1 ratio is a pretty good rule to use if you're going to use a ladder. What that means is that for every 4 feet up, you want the ladder to be 1 foot out. So for example, this ladder is going up 12 feet, so it needs to be 3 feet out. And never use metal ladders in an area where they may come in contact with electrical circuits. Now, climbing the ladder. Maintain 3 points of contact at all times. 1, 2, 3. Also, this isn't a race, so climb slowly, 1 step at a time, keeping your center of gravity directly over the ladder rungs. That means when you get higher, don't reach out. Maintain your center of gravity on the ladder and avoid excessive reaching by keeping the center of your body within the ladder rails. A lean can turn into a fall. How high can we climb and still be safe? Don't go any higher than the 2nd rung from the top on a step ladder. With an extension ladder, such as this one, you want to stay on the 3rd rung from the top or below. A straight ladder should extend 3 feet above the working surface. This will ensure that you have handholds while getting on or off the ladder. Well, here we are again, up high. Now, let's get back down to earth. And when I say earth, I mean earth as in dirt. We need to talk about safety in trenches. In fact, trenches are one of the most dangerous places on a job site. Any trench deeper than 4 feet must have protective systems in place. And when you're digging in a trench, other safety concerns arise as well. For example, power lines, water pipes, and various other cables may be buried where you're digging. Another concern is water accumulated in the trench can cause the walls of the trench to collapse. So if you have not been trained to work in trenches and were not dispatched by Labor Ready to do so, contact your branch immediately. Now let's go back inside. It's conceivable that if you're sent to a construction site, you may be operating a power tool. First off, never operate any tool that you haven't been specifically trained and dispatched to operate. Next, the condition of the power tool itself can present safety hazards. So always check electrical cords and cables to make sure there is no damage. Also, check the power tool itself for exposed wire. In both cases, this power tool is not safe to operate. So ask your supervisor for another one. Thank you. Before you cut that board, I have one more thing to say. When you're working in wet or damp conditions, always ensure that the electrical equipment you're working with is either double insulated or it's plugged into a ground fault circuit interrupter. All that means is that you use an outlet with the test reset buttons. This will prevent our friend from getting electrocuted. Okay, you're good to go. Come with me outside. I'm going to tell you about one more thing. On a construction site, or any work site, for that matter, you need to know what to do in case of emergency. First of all, know the location of the job site. Secondly, know the location of first aid supplies. And finally, become familiar with the work site's evacuation plan. Keeping these things in mind will pay off if an emergency occurs. Now, let's go to our next work site. In a warehouse, the safety issues include lifting, forklift safety, stairways, and heat stress. Make sure you're trained in these areas before beginning work in a warehouse. But before we go any further, let me point out that our worker here is wearing the appropriate PPE for a warehouse. She has her hard hat, earplugs, safety glasses, safety vest, lifting gloves, and safety boots. However, you may need to wear other PPE in a warehouse depending on the environment you'll be in and the work you'll be doing. Looks like you're ready for a day's work.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome. So now let's look at each of these safety issues we mentioned, one by one, starting with lifting. Here we are with our worker. Obviously, she paid attention to the CSR and to the job training she received on the site because she's doing everything right when it comes to lifting. First off, notice how she tests the load to make sure it's not too heavy. And she has a good grip, in this case, a diagonal grip. Now, the key to lifting is to keep your back straight or slightly arched, just like she's doing. Now, watch as she uses her legs, not her back, to lift. And she's keeping the load close to her body, as close to her body as possible. There, she just changed directions. Notice how she didn't twist her back. She used her feet to change directions. And she's carrying the load, she's walking slowly and surely and keeping her back straight. Now, whenever possible, use a dolly, a hand truck, or a cart. These devices are designed to move heavy or awkward loads and will save you from injury. But do not overload this type of equipment. Overloading equipment can reduce your control, and it can block your vision. Do not operate forklifts or other powered industrial trucks without proper training. And it's not just driving a forklift that presents safety issues. You can imagine what kind of injury you'd sustain if you were struck by one of these. So always assume that the driver does not see you. Keep clear and give the vehicle the right of way until you make eye contact with the operator and he signals you to cross. In just about any work setting, you may encounter stairs. And when you're climbing stairs, falling is always a concern. So always maintain 2 points of contact. That means one foot will be on a stair and one hand will be on a handrail. Also, don't skip steps. You should never be in such a hurry that you neglect basic safety. Heat-related illnesses are very real, and not just in a warehouse. Anywhere you work for Labor Ready, you can succumb to heat illnesses. And I'm talking about heat rash, heat cramps, heat exhaustion. To treat a person with heat exhaustion, move the person to a cooler place, but do not leave them alone. Loosen and remove any heavy clothing. Fan the person, and consider calling 911 if the person does not feel better within a few minutes. In order to prevent heat illnesses, follow these simple steps. As we mentioned earlier, stay hydrated. Don't wear clothing too tight. Protect your head from the sun. Limit exposure to the heat, and take breaks in cool areas. Lastly, if you can increase air movement with fans, that will help keep you cool. This leads us to the most dangerous form of heat-related illness, heat stroke. The signs and symptoms of heat stroke may include disorientation, rapid pulse, and red, dry, hot skin. What has happened is that the body has stopped sweating. And when that happens, your body cannot get rid of the heat fast enough. If you start to recognize your own symptoms of heat stroke, or you find a coworker who's disoriented with hot, dry skin, notify your supervisor and call 911 immediately. So that's how to stay safe in a warehouse working environment. Oh, but we have one more working environment to consider. Come with me. Today our worker is at a manufacturing setting. The safety concerns here include machine guarding, lockout, tagout, and confined spaces. Make sure you're trained in these and all other areas of manufacturing safety. But before we go any further, let me point out that this worker is wearing the correct PPE. Safety glasses, hearing protection. However, you may need to wear other PPE in a manufacturing setting, such as a dust mask, a hard hat, or safety boots. Also, you may have to wear a respirator with cartridges. If so, you must be trained and certified. Contact your branch if you are told to wear one of these. Now this worker is about to operate a miter saw. This brings up an important safety point. Most machinery will have guards. Machine guards are intended to keep your fingers, hands, arms, and clothing from being pinched or pulled into the moving machinery. You should be properly trained in any piece of machinery that you'll be using. Prior to using the machine, make sure the guards are in place and secure. Never remove or tamper with the guards or operate machines with the guards removed. If the machine you're using doesn't have a functioning guard, contact your site supervisor. Now, a word about lockout, tagout. You see this lock and tag? This means that this machine is being cleaned or maintained. In this case, the cord is damaged. A machine that has been locked out should be left alone. Here's another example. Never remove a lock or tag unless you're the person who placed them there. And if you are, don't give your keys to anyone else. Many of the work sites you're sent to for labor ready will include confined spaces such as this. These are areas that are not intended for human occupancy. They are dangerous because of the possibility of explosions, low oxygen, or breathing dangerous fumes. Never perform work in an area such as this unless you have been dispatched to do so by labor ready. If you are going to work in a confined space, you will receive special training. By now I hope you have an appreciation for how seriously labor ready takes safety. But if an accident happens on the work site, notify your site supervisor and labor ready immediately. And if you need medical attention, we'll assist you with transportation. By law, you have the right to know if you are to work with a hazardous substance. The customer will have material safety data sheets on any hazardous substance you'll be working with. These sheets contain information about each chemical, its dangers, and how to handle them. Call Labor Ready if the MSDSs are not available. Here are some common hazardous substances you may encounter. 1. Mold. If you are going to be working around mold, you will receive special training. If you find mold unexpectedly, notify your site supervisor and your branch right away. Asbestos. We do not permit our temporary workers to work around asbestos, but you may encounter it unexpectedly on the job. It can be used as insulation, for example. If you encounter any asbestos, contact your site supervisor and notify your branch immediately. Lead. Lead is common on many construction sites as painted or coated surfaces. You can ingest lead if you get it on your hands, or you can inhale it straight from the air. So if you're going to be working around lead, you need to receive special training. Bloodborne pathogens. Diseases such as HIV and hepatitis B can be transmitted by blood and other bodily fluids. Always wear appropriate work gloves and watch for sharp objects in the trash. Should you come in contact with blood or other bodily fluids, contact your site supervisor and notify your branch right away. Well, the day's over for our worker, but our safety processes aren't. What's on your mind at the end of the day is, great, now I get paid. But this end of the day period is also an important part of safety for you and Labor Ready. Let me show you what I mean.
So, Alwyn, how did your day go?
My day was great.
Were you asked to do anything out of the ordinary, anything I hadn't warned you about?
No,
Did you see any unsafe situations at the work site?
I didn't.
Did the customer instruct you completely in how to use a circular saw?
Yes, he did.
Did a competent person inspect the saw to make sure it was in safe working order?
Yes, they did.
Fantastic. Thanks for the hard work.
Sure.
Well, as you can see, the day is over for our worker. He's taking advantage of our work today, pay today approach by using our CDM. He did everything right. He paid attention to his safety training in the branch and at the work site, but most importantly, he put that training into practice when he was on the job. And he remembered a crucial point. His safety is his responsibility. It looks like he could go a long way. That's what we're about here at Labor Ready, giving you a chance to prove yourself. And you can help yourself by living by our Labor Ready values: integrity, passion, responsibility, creativity, and respect. Now here's a guy who did just that. A former Labor Ready temporary worker who proved himself to a customer and worked his way up to a full-time job as a supervisor for a large construction firm.
I was at work every day, worked hard, outworked everyone, and they took notice. If it wasn't for Labor Ready, I would, there's no telling where I would be. Probably unemployed or still working, looking for a job. Labor Ready is a great place, a good opportunity to get a permanent position. My life has changed dramatically. Make a lot more money, make about $3,500, $4,000 a month. I'm doing great. Loving it. I'm in a great position, a great place in my life right now. My advice to a Labor Ready temporary worker would be self-confidence, work safely, show up every day. Who knows? You never know what you can achieve. Thumbs up.
Those are words of wisdom. Here's hoping you find the same success through Labor Ready. Thanks for watching, and stay safe.